Hello and welcome back to the Gluten Free RN podcast. I'm Nadine Briskowiak, RN, BSN, CEN, and the Gluten Free RN. Today during episode 53, I am interviewing Alexander Michaels of the Linus Pauling Institute, which is on the Oregon State University campus here in Corvallis, Oregon. Stay tuned. So, Alex, tell us who you are and what you do here at the Linus Pauling Institute.
I am Alexander Michaels. I'm a research associate that works with the Linus Pauling Institute. I've actually been at the Institute for 17 years now, so I've had multiple roles here. My current roles include research coordinator, which is a clinical research coordinator, and also I help with some of the core lab facilities, and that's kind of an analytic service core that we have here. But beyond the clinical research and analytical service, help with that, I also do some of the communication efforts for the Institute. So anything that goes outside the Institute usually passes by me first, or is started by me. So if you see anything that is written by the Institute or mentions the Institute, they did an interview, it's usually with me in between. Some of the things that we've been trying to do recently are getting our name out in the alumni magazine for Oregon State University, but we also talk to journalists and any media that comes along and wants to ask us questions about what we do.
Okay.
So usually that's me.
Okay, terrific. Okay, and what is your role with the vitamin C?
So I used to be, and I guess you could still say I am to some degree, a vitamin C researcher. Okay. I did my graduate work in vitamin C transporters, proteins that transport vitamin C. And I have an extensive background in vitamin C. Beyond that, I did a postdoc with Baltz Fry, who is the former director of the Linus Pauling Institute, and he has a long history with vitamin C. And he encouraged me to basically explore wherever I wanted to in the frontiers of vitamin C research. When Baltz left last year, that's when I started to move into the clinical realm and kind of shifted away from direct laboratory research with vitamin C. But I still answer a lot of questions on vitamin C. I give lectures on vitamin C. I'd say most of the emails that I answer are on vitamin C. Okay. Most of the questions that I answer on Facebook or other, social media sources are on vitamin C. And I've written a couple book chapters on vitamin C. Yeah. There's a textbook we've just updated. Baltz and I worked together on updating this. I can't remember the exact name, but it's a molecular nutrition handbook for nurses typically. But, nutritionists also use it. We wrote the vitamin C chapter now for the previous edition and this edition. Hopefully this edition is a little bit easier to understand. That was the goal.
Okay. So it's written for nurses in critical care or nurses in general?
I'm not exactly sure. I've been told it's a handbook or not a handbook, but a textbook that's used a lot for nursing. But the nutrition classes here on campus use it as well. Okay. Because they focus on micronutrients for one of their nutrition classes. And this was the best textbook that they could find for going through every micronutrient. It also goes through other nutrients, but it had all the vitamin and mineral information. And so each expert in the field wrote a chapter. Okay. So it's an assemblage of expert knowledge.
So is that book available at the Oregon State Library here on campus?
I think so. It's by Caudill, Caudill, I believe. Okay. Marie Caudill and Stipanuk. I could get the exact title.
Okay, that's okay.
But it also, I know it's available on Amazon because that's how I check when the next edition is coming out.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'll check that out. So what is the difference between a micronutrient and a macronutrient?
So a micronutrient, calling something micro versus, big versus small is probably too simple. For the most part, it's things we only need in small quantities compared to the macronutrients. The macronutrients are typically defined as fat, carbohydrate, and protein. Those are the only macronutrients. Now, we need grams of those per day, whereas typically for micronutrients, we only need milligrams or micrograms of each individual. There's some exceptions. For example, potassium. I think the recommendations are somewhere on the order of over 4 grams of potassium a day, which is usually written as 4,700 milligrams. Sodium also is milligrams. It totals up to grams, but they still consider it a micronutrient because it's not fat, protein, and carbohydrate.
Okay. So anything on the back of a multivitamin would be full of micronutrients?
Mostly. There are also some phytochemicals, and this is where a distinction that we make. Micronutrients are typically vitamins and minerals. I should even go further to say essential minerals, because there are some minerals that are not essential. At least research has shown that they're not essential. And by essential, we mean essential to life.
Right.
If they have no essentiality, then it's kind of a vague area of, is it a micronutrient or not?
Okay.
But beyond vitamins and minerals, there's phytochemicals, which is kind of the catch-all for anything that comes from a plant source. And those are distinct in that we don't need them to live. Now, they may be helpful for us. They may have health benefits. A lot of people take them for health benefits, but they're not essential for life. So therefore, they're phytochemical, not a nutrient or micronutrient. So there's macronutrients, micronutrients, and phytochemicals. Okay,
great. And what is the most exciting thing about vitamin C that you can think of right now?
The most exciting. I'm trying not to be a complete scientist about this. So the most exciting thing, I think, for many people is the resurgence of vitamin C as a cancer therapy.
Okay. Did you say the reemergence?
Yeah, or resurgence. Yeah. Because Linus Pauling in 1970, I'm going to blank on the year, 1974, I believe, published his book, Cancer and Vitamin C. And it's been over 40 years, and we're finally getting down to the science of why that might work. So it is a resurgence in the sense that he had the idea in the 70s. He even did some small trials with vitamin C in cancer patients and showed benefit, but then it was mostly dismissed in the 80s because of the nuances of that research. But now it's making a comeback. We're understanding the chemistry more. And this also has allowed vitamin C to be used in other therapies besides cancer, such as sepsis and other infectious diseases.
Okay, can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so I hesitate to use the word new exactly because, like I said, with cancer, it's not entirely new. These theories have been going around for a while, and some of the evidence has been out there in the literature for decades.
Right.
But I guess the evidence with sepsis kind of built up slowly over the years. It was hypothesized by many researchers in the vitamin C field that it could be helpful, and they were pushing and pushing for people to try it. And finally, when some MDs decided that they were going to do so, they saw some remarkable results. So currently, we have some evidence that vitamin C, when included in a sepsis therapy, has shown benefits, reversal of organ failure, changes to, trying to remember all the various things, that decrease in inflammation, increased survival rate. I mean, that's basically the bottom line, is people who get vitamin C as part of their sepsis therapy do better.
Okay. And some of these people have actually, it's the last ditch attempt to treat them because of antibiotic resistance and a number of other factors.
Sure. I mean, I don't think at this point the people who are doing vitamin C therapies, they don't go through and wait to see if other things are going to work first.
Okay, good.
So
that's ideal.
Yeah, because time is critical. So one of the MDs, Paul Merrick, who was recently on NPR talking about his therapy, which is not vitamin C alone. It's vitamin C in a mixture of corticosteroid. I can't remember the exact one off the top of my head. Thiamine and vitamin C combo. And he has shown some remarkable effects with this therapy. And he came to our Diet and Optimum Health conference in September and showed us some of the case studies. And he's getting remarkable recovery from sepsis when he uses the combo. Now, carefully controlled studies haven't been done to show which of those components is the best, or if all three are necessary to get maximal effect. But in this point, because it's so successful, taking out one of those components is almost like it comes with a risk.
Sure.
So if vitamin C turns out to be the most active component, you took it out on a case-controlled study and people start dying, that's considered unethical. So he's continuing on with the combo.
Okay. There's no downside to any of these. They're not dangerous in and of themselves for the most part.
Right.
So
I mean, they've all been used individually by others. They may not have been very controlled studies in the past, but the corticosteroids have been used all by themselves. In fact, I think some of the comparisons that he did in his manuscripts that are online now kind of compared it to corticosteroids alone. And I believe people with the combo did better than just corticosteroids alone. But I'd have to go check the article again, but I'm not sure if he was the one doing the controls or if he was just looking through case reports.
Right.
Yeah.
And those studies are hard to replicate because there's so many different factors when people are critically ill.
Yeah. They have a set of criteria that they say, okay, this person is a good candidate for this therapy. And other doctors may see those criteria in a different fashion.
Okay.
So, but then, what is causing the sepsis, how advanced it was when it started. I mean, all those things are very hard to duplicate. But the fact that he's actually part of a network of doctors that are working on this, and they're all showing some signs of success. I think Barry Fowler, Verry, his actual first name is Alpha, but he goes by Barry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alpha Fowler III, I believe is his formal name. He works in Virginia as well, along with Paul Merrick and some other MDs. I can't remember their names off the top of my head.
That's okay.
He was also at our Diet and Optimum Health conference and spoke of the work he's doing. I think they're looking at lung injury in sepsis. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're showing benefits. They're kind of working together and communicating with each other about what's working and what's not working.
Okay.
So it's not just one doctor in one facility just getting remarkable results that nobody can replicate. They're kind of trying to spread this therapy out. Hopefully it'll go to other facilities across the country, if not just the Eastern Seaboard.
Okay, those are two very important uses for vitamin C, medically or clinically. And how does vitamin C work in these situations?
I was going to preface some of the talk about vitamin C and
I wanted to get to the exciting stuff first.
Sepsis, because this is intravenous vitamin C.
Okay.
And Linus Pauling really didn't know this when he was doing his trials, but intravenous and oral vitamin C are two different beasts.
Okay.
Intravenous vitamin C can bypass the gastrointestinal system, obviously, and accumulate in high concentrations in the bloodstream. Remarkably, even though people getting intravenous vitamin C goes straight into the bloodstream, levels of vitamin C or ascorbic acid get high in the blood, they can infuse grams or tens of grams of vitamin C, even up to 100 grams of vitamin C without any negative effects. The body, in a sense, can handle it. Whereas if you ate that same amount of vitamin C, the body would decide to flush it through the gastrointestinal tract, and usually that results in diarrhea, gas, bloating. So you can only absorb a certain amount of an oral dose, whereas an intravenous dose, you absorb all of it. There's an important distinction there. And so that distinction kind of influences how we understand what it's doing. I also say that we don't quite understand what it's doing.
That's okay.
Yeah. This is kind of the frontier, why vitamin C is working in these situations. It will help us understand how to make it better and where it can be applicable. So if it's already working, which it is, in some people who have cancer, but only some people who have cancer. In some people who have sepsis, not everyone who has sepsis, this shows benefit. Why? That's where the black boxes because we don't know the mechanism of what's going on. We don't know how to make it better and more effective for a wider number of people. So we do know several roles which vitamin C can play. And we assume that intravenous vitamin C is doing some of those things. Oral vitamin C can also do some of those things. For intravenous vitamin C, one of the things that doesn't happen with oral vitamin C is that you get levels so high that they can actually produce hydrogen peroxide, which sounds a little creepy sometimes because you normally think of hydrogen peroxide as something that you pour on a wound to disinfect it.
Right.
And causes nasty bubbling, and you don't necessarily want to get it in your mouth if you can help it, or, And
hydrogen peroxide has been shown to be somewhat damaging to tissue.
If it's exposed to lots of hydrogen peroxide.
Okay.
What seems to happen with vitamin C is that when it accumulates in high concentrations, it can convert oxygen to hydrogen peroxide.
Oh.
But the body doesn't like hydrogen peroxide sitting around. So if it happens in the blood, there are enzymes in the bloodstream, or the red blood cells themselves can take care of that hydrogen peroxide. It disappears. You don't even see it. If it happens in a cell, the cell takes care of it. There's an enzyme called catalase it's also in the bloodstream, but it's abundant, highly abundant in cells that will just get rid of the hydrogen peroxide and turn it to water. But there's a little space in between a cell and your blood vessels. Some people call it the interstitial space, where there's no enzyme that can take care of the hydrogen peroxide formed by vitamin C. That's where they think the magic is happening.
Oh.
So when vitamin C gets to high enough concentration, it will build up in the interstitial space, form the hydrogen peroxide, and then that floods into a cell. Now, that sounds bad to normal cell, but it turns out that normal cells can just take care of that hydrogen peroxide. Where we're hoping that has an effect is cancer cells, which are kind of teetering on the edge of life and death. They exhibit a high metabolism. To throttle that metabolism, they kind of are in between, in kind of a red line in terms of oxidative stress. And so when the hydrogen peroxide floods in, the cell can't take care of it. And so we tend to see cancer cells die when they get hit with that hydrogen peroxide.
Oh.
Now that I said that, it doesn't happen with all cancer cells.
Okay.
Only
that was
some of them.
My next question.
Yeah.
Is it specific for certain cancers, or?
We don't quite understand yet. Our best theories are that some cancer cells still maintain their oxidative defense capabilities, the enzyme catalase, for example, but others may be producing hydrogen peroxide themselves by accident as a result of their high metabolism, or have downregulated their catalase to upregulate something else to keep them growing. And so they're kind of teetering on that edge. So there are some studies out there that have been looking at different types of cancers. Some seem to be more susceptible than others. But can I say, oh, you have a prostate cancer, it's not going to work for you? Not yet.
Okay.
We don't know. For example, the early studies that showed vitamin C had benefit were done in pancreatic tumors.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, very effective in pancreatic tumors. Why? At first, they didn't ask that question.
Sure.
They just said, it works.
Okay.
But then you go to breast cancer and it doesn't work. And again, it's not all breast cancers.
Sure.
It's not all pancreatic tumors. But what is that difference? And can we do anything to make cells more susceptible? That's the frontier. I mean, until we understand the exact mechanisms of what's going on and whether we can pinpoint a tumor and say that is going to be susceptible to vitamin C and this one will not, until that point, we kind of guess.
Okay. What would the other benefits of a vitamin C intravenously be?
In sepsis, the benefit to vitamin C, I think, is getting past gastrointestinal tract.
Right.
Because in sepsis, things tend to shut down. Your organs tend to not work as well as they could. Inflammation is so high that absorption levels decline. So if you gave a patient some oral vitamin C and said, okay, this will help you, probably not going to see it getting very far because it'll get to the gastrointestinal tract and either not make it through or get destroyed before it gets very far. So intravenous is a benefit because it's direct. It gets high concentrations very quickly and doesn't have to deal with inflamed gastrointestinal tract. However,
and the hydrochloric acid of the stomach.
Well, the hydrochloric acid of the stomach is actually protective for vitamin C, because I'll get more into that in just a moment. When you look at the papers that do the sepsis therapies, you actually see that they use less vitamin C intravenous than the cancer people do.
Okay.
Because their purpose is really not to drive the hydrogen peroxide production. That's a cancer cell-killing effect. You don't want to harm a sepsis patient any more than they've already been harmed.
Right.
What they think is going on is that they're just restoring vitamin C towards normal levels. And there's some evidence that they're correct, because in sepsis, vitamin C levels drop precipitously. Some of the lowest plasma levels of vitamin C have been seen in sepsis patients. I think my former boss, Dr. Fry, said the only time he saw 0 vitamin C in the body was in someone who had sepsis that was about to die. Their attempts in this intravenous therapy is just to restore the vitamin C back to where the body can function. Now, whether it has other effects because it gets high for short periods of time, we don't really know. It could have effects on the bacteria cells. The hydrogen peroxide, for example, could attack the bacteria, but we don't know that at the moment. There's a lot of iron floating around in sepsis, and reactive iron is a bad thing for vitamin C. Vitamin C and iron don't play well together. It's one of the many ways that vitamin C can get oxidized.
Okay.
So in sepsis, we're not sure if intravenous vitamin C is protecting from negative effects of iron, if it's just restoring vitamin C to a normal level so the cells can function properly, or if it's reducing inflammation. There's lots of other roles it could play. These, we think, would be achievable with oral dosage if the gastrointestinal tract wasn't shut down. We haven't done a lot of controls to figure this out. Again, it's our frontier of vitamin C.
So is vitamin C readily available in the IV form or infusion?
Oh, readily available.
Through pharmaceuticals, or how do practitioners get it?
There's actually a very few companies in the world that make intravenous vitamin C. There used to be one up in Canada. I don't even know if they exist anymore. There was a few in Australia.
Okay.
They do exist, but it's hard to get your hands on. Most naturopaths who do it have a dedicated supplier, but I don't know if they have to change suppliers often because of the fact that people just get out of the vitamin C business.
Sounds like a good business to currently be in.
Well, the money, how do you make a profit on vitamin C? Vitamin C is dirt cheap.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah. So, you have to kind of jack up the price in order to make a profit on a bottle of vitamin C. But intravenous infusions are becoming more popular.
Sure.
So,
supply and demand.
Yeah. So eventually, someone's going to go into that market. I know there are some that exist in countries where this is not seen as fringe.
Okay.
Australia, there's a lot of popularity around vitamin C. Some in New Zealand as well.
Okay.
Because of stories. And there's some researchers that work in New Zealand, for example, that used to work here in the Institute, or some of them used to work here in the Institute, that have been showing these benefits. And so it's becoming more in the popular conscious that intravenous vitamin C can do some good. Here, medical doctors often don't know about it. And so you have to go to the naturopaths or some other specialty clinics in order to get it.
So it sounds like the naturopaths are more educated about what the vitamin C can do for their patients. I
would say so, yeah.
As opposed to the Western medicine educated doctors at this point?
Yeah. Just because it's not part of their typical education. Even the roles that micronutrients can play in health is not strongly emphasized in medical.
That's too bad.
Medical practice. I know. Yeah. We've been trying at the Linus Pauling Institute, trying to get that kind of information out to the medical community, but finding those inroads is not always easy.
What are some of the obstacles that would prevent that information? Because it is potentially life-saving and very therapeutic.
I think the main obstacle, at least with the medical community, is trying to find a way of entering the established education system for medical students. It's kind of medical doctors teach medical doctors the same thing over and over again.
Yes.
And if they haven't seen anything be effective, they're not going to incorporate it into their practice, and they're not going to incorporate it into their education. And so the things that work keep getting repeated, but the things that could work, but they haven't tried yet, never seem to get in there. Breaking in, I guess, into the education cycle of a medical practitioner.
So, Alex, let me ask you this. We live in Corvallis, Oregon. We work in Corvallis, Oregon. There's a medical school that is also associated with our local medical facility. Mm-hmm. Have you educated the students through that university?
We have not yet. It'd be nice to do so. We'd really like to have some way of communicating the information that we have to the medical students, but we haven't developed any sort of partnership with them yet.
That's unfortunate. I hope that goes forward. Some of the Healthy Youth Program, which is part of the Linus Pauling Institute, has been working with Samaritan to do education on healthy eating, which includes some of the components of fruits and vegetables that may, contain high amounts of vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin K, that may be beneficial minerals. There's a little bit of micronutrients mixed into those lessons, but this is primarily given to patients, a little bit to the practitioners, but to the patients who are suffering from diseases that are related to unhealthy eating patterns. Okay, so talk a little bit about the deficiencies that not just vitamin C, because some people probably don't even know that a deficiency in vitamin C is called
scurvy. Yeah. A term we often hear is deficiency. And there's two ways to define deficiency. I think people hear the word deficiency in the media, and that's not how nutritionists define deficiency. So you're right. Scurvy is a deficiency disease for vitamin C. There's diseases associated with other deficiencies in micronutrients. But nutritionists call it inadequacies. When you're not getting as much in your diet to satisfy your body's needs, but you've avoided deficiency. So you'll hear the word deficiency in a news article, and say many people are deficient in vitamin E, for example. Well, deficient in that sense is not quite the right term. They're mostly talking about inadequate, but they use the word deficient because it sounds better. So deficient is someone who's got a problem. Okay. Inadequate is someone who hasn't displayed any outward signs of having a problem, but they're still not getting the amount that science says they should have. Okay. So scurvy, for example, I'll use scurvy as an example because it's the one I know the best. When you don't eat enough vitamin C, and this is extremely low levels of vitamin C that are required to prevent scurvy. If you don't eat enough vitamin C for a few months, you'll start to get bleeding gums, corkscrew hair growth. Your hair starts to grow on your arms and legs, starts to grow in little corkscrew patterns, open wounds that won't heal properly. And that's just signs of malaise, energy deficiencies. Those are all signs of what we call scurvy.
Okay.
And that's just because
people can die of scurvy.
Oh, sure. And there have been cases of scurvy even in the modern world, but it's very rare. Unless they're on a very restrictive diet where they're not getting vitamin C from natural sources, scurvy hardly ever exists in the Western world. There have been a couple cases, like, for example, I heard of a case in the UK not that long ago. I think it was a boy who was just eating pudding and other processed food. Parents weren't making him eat fruits and vegetables, so he got scurvy. And then the parents were arrested for neglect. And then in Spain, I think there was a case about another boy who was being given a diet of almond milk. I think it was an infant, actually. They thought almond milk was a complete nutritional source. Well, there's no vitamin C in almond milk.
Right.
So
there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of other things, but almond milk doesn't have vitamin C. Nuts typically do not have any vitamin C. And so the infant developed scurvy because the parents didn't supplement with another source of vitamin C. If they weren't going to use breast milk, for example, which has vitamin C, they have to find another source somewhere else. So it does happen, but it's very rare. Most people who haven't eaten vitamin C, like if I stopped eating vitamin C today, scurvy symptoms wouldn't show up for a couple months. I'd have to avoid every fruit and vegetable that came across my path in order to get that scurvy. So it's very hard to do. That's why sailors got it, because they were in a very closed off from natural fresh fruits and vegetables. So, most people who eat some fresh fruits and vegetables are going to avoid scurvy. Now, does that mean you're getting enough vitamin C? That's the question, because there's no outward sign, because scurvy is extreme. And in between, though, in sufficiency side of things, there's no outward sign that you've got a problem. You may not be getting enough vitamin C, but you don't know it. Okay. That gets into some of the roles that we have for vitamin C in immunity, antioxidant function. What's the sign that you have low antioxidant capacity in your blood? There's really no sign.
Right.
Outward sign. You may be more susceptible to diseases. You may be more susceptible to an infection. You may be more susceptible to this, that, or the other thing, but you won't know that vitamin C was the cause. Yeah, you could get more infections, but maybe it's because of something else. It's really hard to trace back to low vitamin C levels. Vitamin C is an anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, but it's not the only one.
Okay. Is it the best one? Is it the best antioxidant?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think so, but no, I shouldn't.
No,
that's my personal bias. The best antioxidant is the one that works. So,
good. Oh, that's a diplomatic answer.
A lot of people have their own favorite antioxidant. I mean, if you look at the number of antioxidant micronutrients that exist, some have the antioxidant properties. And vitamin E is the first one that comes to mind. That's a lipid-soluble antioxidant. So that's a fat-soluble. Right.
What's the best source of vitamin E?
Ooh, sunflower seeds.
Oh, excellent answer.
I know that because one of the clinical trials that we recently did at the Linus Pauling Institute was on hazelnuts.
Oh, and because we grow hazelnuts here in the Willamette Valley.
And it was sponsored by the Hazelnut Marketing Board of Oregon. And they were interested in knowing if hazelnuts can help change vitamin E levels in the body. The study's not complete, so I can't give you the answer. But hazelnuts are the second highest nut source of vitamin E.
Okay.
Almonds is the top, but almonds come from California, so yeah.
We're in Oregon.
So we're in Oregon. We want hazelnuts. But seeds are a pretty good source, but not all of them. This is an interesting part about vitamin E, is that like if you looked at nuts,
right?
Any nut, you have a variety of nuts sitting out on a table somewhere, and you were asked which one of these contains vitamin E, you'd say, well, all of them. They're nuts. It's not true. There are some nuts that have more and some nuts that have less. Almonds and hazelnuts happen to have a lot. Peanuts, pretty good source, even though they're not a tree nut, But walnuts, cashews, not so much.
Really?
Yeah. So people who are eating a lot of walnuts and cashews saying, I'm getting enough vitamin E that I need, maybe not.
Okay.
That kind of gets back to the deficiency inadequacy question. How do you know that you're getting enough? You really don't. You got to look at what you're eating and know about those food sources.
So what is the best food source for vitamin C?
Okay.
Or
are
there multiple food sources?
I would say, there's multiple food sources, sure. I'd say I'm kind of crossing the road of things people actually eat
sure.
with abundance in the natural world, or at least the civilized world. I'd say chili peppers.
Chili peppers?
Yeah.
That's a surprise.
Oh, yeah. Chili peppers are one of the most dense sources of vitamin C. Chili peppers are small, so they don't have, in total, the largest amount of vitamin C, but in a small packet, I guess, you get a lot of vitamin C in a pepper. Bell peppers are actually high up there as well. So bell peppers are just under chili peppers, and it depends on the chili. Some chilies more so than others, but there's a lot of vitamin C in a pepper, all peppers.
Excellent. I would have thought citrus.
Tropical fruits. Actually, although oranges are considered probably the most known source of vitamin C, they're actually somewhere in the middle. The biggest, I'd say, would be a papaya.
Ooh, that's good to know also.
Yeah. Papayas have large amounts of vitamin C.
How about mangoes then?
I think actually mangoes are farther down.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. You can't judge.
It's not the color.
Yeah, you can't judge the source by what it looks like or where it comes from.
Okay.
For example, the highest source of vitamin C known that I know of, or the highest two sources, I don't remember which one's on top, is the Kakadu plum, which comes from Australia, I believe. It is an extremely high source of vitamin C that nobody wants to eat because it tastes awful.
Is it bitter or
I think
astringent?
It's bitter and sour, if I remember correctly, and only birds eat it. The other one is called camu camu. Camu camu comes from South America, Brazil, I believe, is where it's found, kind of in the Amazon basin. The native people have ignored that fruit because it's boring. It has almost no flavor, but it is a really high source of vitamin C. And now you see camu camu showing up in American markets because
health food stores
camu camu powder because it's a high quantity of vitamin C.
And does vitamin C, when it gets processed, does it denigrate at all? Does it go away or is it lessened?
It does. Vitamin C is very susceptible to a few factors. One of them is heat. Another one is kind of mechanical disruption. So like, for example, if you put vitamin C in a blender or a fruit in a juicer, you're going to lose some of the vitamin C just because of the processing. Heat, light destroys vitamin C. Basic pH, so anything above pH 7 is bad for vitamin C, but anything below, like in the acidic range, is good. So when we were talking about stomach acids earlier, once vitamin C gets into your stomach, it's preserved. But what happens before it gets into your stomach is what determines how much you wind up getting. Yeah, there are enzymatic factors that can destroy vitamin C. In fact, when I did a webinar on our Linus Pauling Institute website, I mentioned once that there are enzymes that destroy vitamin C, and then I got a whole bunch of emails saying, which ones, from what fruits, what do I have to avoid putting in my smoothie? And it is possible. You know, you can destroy vitamin C through an enzyme that came from the exact same fruit that gave you the vitamin C. So you have to be careful about that, or if you're trying to maximize your vitamin C load. Iron also will destroy vitamin C. Iron and copper do not play well with vitamin C. So if you cook vitamin C in a copper pan, for example, you're going to destroy your vitamin C. Okay. You got heat and you got copper. It's a bad combo. So, air is another one. Sorry, oxygen.
So that's why it comes in a tight-lidded brown bottle, typically ascorbic acid, so it doesn't get broken down. Does vitamin C displace other vitamins, or do other vitamins or micronutrients displace vitamin C ever? Sometimes that happens.
I don't know of any studies that have shown that. I think it's been talked about quite a bit, but the studies haven't really shown that vitamin C causes any ill effect, or something else can get rid of vitamin C faster, from your body. So both ways, if you take a lot of vitamin C, will it get rid of something that your body needs? Or if you take a lot of something else, will it get rid of your vitamin C? That really hasn't been shown in research studies. There are some anecdotal pieces of evidence that suggest that vitamin C can do some funny things to some minerals, particularly copper and iron. But what we know from studies is that if you take vitamin C with iron, actually it enhances iron absorption.
Right.
It's one of those rare pieces of information that people just don't know. I tell everyone I know.
I tell everyone that too.
Especially when they've got anemia. Yeah.
Iron deficiency.
Yeah, iron deficiency anemia, not the other kinds. You should take your iron and vitamin C together. I've actually helped a lot of people I know deal with anemia because I've told them, hey, didn't your doctor tell you to take vitamin C with that iron?
Heck no.
Yeah. Iron overload is a problem in some people. So you have to,
especially genetically predisposed.
You have to be careful. Those people have to be careful.
Exactly.
And then there is an interplay between iron and copper. So some people say, taking synthetic vitamin C will deplete the copper concentrations in your body. There's a whole line of questions I get every day about synthetic versus natural vitamin C and why one's preferred over the other. And
is there a better one?
They're identical.
It food source?
They're identical.
Okay.
Chemically, synthetic vitamin C is the same as natural vitamin C.
That is very good to know.
Some people believe that there are factors that go along with vitamin C in fruits, vegetables, that need to come along with it to help vitamin C work in the body. That has not been shown in the scientific literature. Synthesized vitamin C, which synthetic makes it sound like it's assembled molecule by molecule in a lab somewhere. It's actually assembled by microorganisms. So is it really synthetic? The microorganisms make it. So it's in a live organism, and then we just harvest it out of there. But anyway, there's really no difference between the two. You take the synthesized version and the natural version, and they will both cure scurvy. They will both increase vitamin C levels in your body. They will both reduce your susceptibility to inflammation, colds. So there are some vitamins out there that there is a difference between natural and synthetic. Vitamin C is not one of them.
Okay. That is really a good point for everyone to take home from this lecture. That's one of them. There's so many good points. So we're going to wrap it up here. But What are some of the key points that you would like people to know? Number one, about the Linus Pauling Institute. And number two, about vitamin C. And number three, where they can find all of this great information if they want more.
I'll answer number three first. That's either the Linus Pauling Institute website, which is lpi.oregonstate.edu, or the Micronutrient Information Center, which is attached to the Linus Pauling Institute website. We're also on social media. And so we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter,
Instagram.
Not yet.
Don't take too many
Pinterest. We're on Pinterest of all places, but we haven't gotten to Instagram yet. We're on LinkedIn. Yeah, we haven't gotten to Instagram because nobody wants to see pictures of tablets all the time. But the takeaway messages for the Linus Pauling Institute is we're an institute dedicated to determining optimal levels of nutrition, but not in the conventional sense, fat, protein, and carbohydrates, but more of the micronutrients and phytochemicals, and how various sources of those micronutrients and phytochemicals can improve your health, and where that optimum point is. We don't want people to take levels that are too high that will cause harm, but we also want to warn people against getting too little of a certain micronutrient or phytochemical that will predispose them to disease. So we're trying to find that optimal range. That's kind of what the definition of orthomolecular medicine was. The Linus Pauling Institute used to be called the Orthomolecular Institute when Linus Pauling founded it in 1970. What I'd like people to know about vitamin C is that you really need to look at your sources of vitamin C in your diet and see if they reach our recommendations. Our current recommendations, the Linus Pauling Institute recommends 400 milligrams of vitamin C per day, which is more than what other places recommend, but less than what Linus Pauling himself took. He took grams of vitamin C per day. Based on our review of the literature, 400 seems to be that optimal point. If you take more, there's probably not going to be much harm. If you take less, you're running the risk of getting into that inadequate range where you're not going to have the optimal amounts. The RDA for vitamin C is 90 milligrams for men, 75 for women, I believe. And we feel that's just way too low.
Okay.
So look at how you're getting vitamin C in your diet. And if you can't really make it up with the fruits and vegetables that you eat, you might want to consider a supplement.
Okay, so just talk briefly about the supplementation. So if people are on a standard American diet and they're eating a lot of fast food or convenience foods that are highly processed, do you recommend that people really have their levels checked of things like, because most people don't have their vitamin C level checked.
It's also not an easy thing to do. It's not something you would necessarily go to a doctor and say, check my vitamin C levels. They'll be like, why? And I don't even know how to do that. Vitamin D is commonplace nowadays. Everybody knows how to check vitamin D. There's clinical labs that do it across the country, but there's no clinical lab, no standards on how to measure vitamin C. We can do it at the Linus Pauling Institute because we're experts in it, but we know what we're doing. And we know the best way to do it. We know the best way to do it. There are services out there that claim to measure vitamins and minerals, but it's
little dubious?
Yeah, it depends on the source, And also, if you, for example, said, I want to go get my magnesium levels checked, let's just pick magnesium or zinc, just a mineral. Those minerals don't really change in the bloodstream. Even if you weren't getting enough in your diet and you still went in and you said, okay, check my mineral levels. And they said, well, they're fine. You're okay. It's not necessarily means that you shouldn't try to get more zinc or magnesium or other minerals in your diet.
I always recommend that people have their magnesium RBCs checked because what we do want to know is how much magnesium is actually in the red blood cell.
That's a good one. And I don't know if that's the best marker because each mineral has its own best marker and some of minerals have no best marker.
Ooh.
So you should still strive to get the amount that's recommended, regardless of what your tests come back as. If you get a test that says you're in the normal range, that doesn't mean you shouldn't strive for that recommended dose.
Okay.
If you have to go above that, it just depends on the situation.
Right.
Some people take
Absorption.
Yeah. Some people take magnesium levels to help with blood pressure, for example. There were lots of articles written on magnesium supplementation. I'm sure everyone, before they started taking the magnesium supplementation, got their blood levels checked. They were probably fine.
Normal. In the serum.
Then they took the magnesium supplements, saw a benefit. Did the magnesium levels change? Probably not. So the doctors say, well, we can't see any observable effect of this supplementation. Well, my blood pressure went down. So
that's observable.
But unfortunately, those kind of studies are few and far between, and collecting them all together to get enough power to make a recommendation is not easy. So some people supplement may have an effect that's not necessarily listed on the label, a beneficial effect. Other people, it might not.
Okay. Well, Alex, thank you very much for this interview. I really appreciate all of the information that you've given us today, and it is quite exciting.
Yeah, thank you for coming out.
Okay. We'll
pleasure to talk to you.
Hopefully talk to you again soon.
Oh, yeah.